Welcome back to Storytime with Miss Porter. Today we are finishing our book, Louisiana's Way Home. So we are reading chapters 26 through 28 today. Warning, they're short chapters. So I'm hoping to find out some good news. I want a happy ending so bad. So let's see. Chapter 26. When I can't think on what I need to do, or when I need to solve a really hard problem, what I do is climb up high, up to the top of that good night sign, said Burke. Well, I am not climbing up to the top of that sign, I said, because as I told you before, I am afraid of heights. We don't got to go to the top of the sign, said Burke, just to the top of a tree. Sitting in a tree and looking up can help you figure things out. Well, I didn't have any more strength to argue with him. And in addition, I didn't know who I was. For all I knew, I was somebody who was not afraid of heights. My goodness, it was possible. I followed Burke to the big live oak beside the Goodnight Sleep Tight. He climbed up into the crook of it, and then he stood there and looked down at me. All you got to do is give me your hand, Louisiana, he said. I'll go on ahead of you, and I'll keep holding out my hand to you, all right? Go ahead, I said. Clarence was sitting on a branch, watching both of us. This here is the first step, said Burke. This is where you start. Come on. You got to do the first part on your own. Grab hold of the tree. I walked closer to the tree. Clarence laughed. Grab hold of that branch right there, said Burke. I took hold of the branch. It was rough and warm. Good, said Burke. Now, go on and pull yourself up just a bit. I pulled myself up. Burke smiled at me. He went up higher in the tree. Come on now, he said. He held out his hand. Well, I was off the ground and in the tree, and I just didn't think I was interested in going much farther. The person I used to call Granny had always told me that I was overly cautious, physically, and I suppose I was. But maybe I didn't have to be. Maybe it was like Reverend Obertask had said. I could decide who I wanted to be. Burke said, Louisiana, if you take my hand and come up higher, I will go and get you anything you want out of that old vending machine. And that is always the problem with me, isn't it? I cannot keep from wanting things. I want peanuts, I said. All right, said Burke. He stuck his hand farther out. And an O. Henry bar. Okay, he said. 2 O. Henry bars. I'll get you everything you want, he said. I took Burke's hand. It felt rough and warm, the same as the tree branch. Come on, said Burke. I got hold of you. Put your foot right there. Don't look down. I put my foot where he told me to. I kept hold of his hand. I did not look down. And bit by bit we climbed to the top of the tree. It is a wondrous thing to be at the top of a tree, particularly when you have 2 O. Henry bars to eat and a bag of peanuts. When we got to the top, Burke left me and climbed back down to go to the vending machine. I stayed and held on to the branch. I looked down, and guess what? I did not feel afraid. I truly did not. I looked down, and guess what? I did not feel afraid. I truly did not. Maybe it was because Clarence was on the branch next to me, or maybe it was just because I was done with being afraid. Or who knows? Maybe I had never been afraid of heights to begin with. Maybe it was just one more lie that Granny had told me about myself. I don't know. But I do know that I ate both candy bars and all the peanuts. Burke and Clarence were beside me, and even though the light was fading, I was happy. The 3 of us watched together as the sky turned into a purple kind of blue. Look at it, said Burke. You can see the stars now. It got darker and the stars got brighter, and I still felt happy. So I started to sing. I sang a song about sitting in a tree with a boy and a crow, looking up at the stars, and it was a happy song. I put an O. Henry bar into it. And also peanuts and a marble cake. I did not add curses or dark alleys. I put only happy things in the song, and it made me happy to sing it. Dang, said Burke when I was done. That's a good song. At least I knew that about myself. At least I knew I was somebody who could sing. That was something Granny had given me. She had given me a lot, I suppose. Look right there, I said to Burke. That's the Pinocchio constellation. Where? Said Burke. That one right there. See? That is the face, and that is the long nose of someone telling a lie. Shoot, Louisiana, said Burke. That constellation is called the Big Dipper. Grandpap showed me that one forever ago. See how it looks like a big old scoop? And that's the handle to it right there. It ain't a nose, it's a handle. And over there is the North Star. That's the one you want to look at for when you're lost in the woods, because then you know what direction north is, and then you ain't lost anymore. Oh, I said. I stared up at the North Star. I could not imagine not being lost. We should probably head on back so they don't come looking for us, said Burke. You want me to help you with the climbing down? No, I said. I can do it. You go ahead of me, and I'll follow you. All right, said Burke. Have you ever had marble cake? I asked Burke as we went down the tree. I have had all of them cakes that Mama makes, he said. I have had every one of them. They're all good. Your mother figured out that Granny is gone, I said when we were both back on the ground. Burke turned to me. And she told me that I could stay with you, I said. That I could live with your family. That means you ain't going to go back to Florida then? I don't know what I'm going to do, I said. Do you want me to stay? Burke shrugged. He said, I think it'll be all right if you stayed. I think it would be great if you stayed. He shrugged again. But I ain't going to tell you what to do. I nodded and said, Show me again which star is the North Star. Burke pointed. That one, right there. Thank you, I said. It seems like a good thing to know the star that can keep you from being lost in this world. Chapter 27. We all went to the carnival, me and Burke and Betty Allen, and the Father Burke and the Grandfather Burke. And I still had not made up my mind whether I would stay or whether I would leave. I just could not decide. But the good news is that the world-famous Betty Allen cake raffle was set up on the lawn in front of the Lost Shepherd Church. The cakes were arranged end to end on a long table, and they were beautiful to behold. There was a large glass fishbowl on the table, too. And every time somebody bought a raffle ticket, Betty Allen ripped the ticket in half and put one half into the bowl and handed the other half back to the person who hoped to win the cake. The piano had been rolled out from the social hall, and Miss Lulu was playing what she must have thought was an appropriate cake raffling song. It occurred to me that no matter what I did, I just could not escape from Miss Lulu and her attempts at making music. It cost $1 for every ticket, and Burke Allen, the grandfather, gave me $5 so I could purchase 5 tickets because I really, really wanted to win a cake. I would buy you all them cakes, Doodlebug, said Grandfather Burke. I would buy you every last one of them. You don't even got to throw your tiny hat into the ring. All you got to do is say the word, and I will buy 'em all up for you. But I wanted to enter the raffle. I wanted to throw my tiny hat into the ring. I wanted to take my chances. Miss Lulu continued to play music, pounding away at what sounded to me like a cake raffle dirge, until all the tickets were sold, and then Betty Allen said, We have 17 cakes, ladies and gentlemen, and I will call 17 winning numbers. People applauded, and I clapped too, and then I looked down at my tickets. Were they winning tickets? I could not tell. I studied them very carefully. Betty Allen cleared her throat. Miss Lulu played a dramatic piano roll. Betty Allen said, The first winner is 256. Well, I did not have ticket number 256. I went through my 5 tickets several times just to make sure. A very large lady in a purple dress shouted, That's me! That's me! I have won a cake! And she moved up to the table to select her cake, while Miss Lulu played another dramatic roll on the piano, and everybody applauded. And then we started all over again. Betty Allen put her hand into the fishbowl. Miss Lulu played some piano, and then Betty Allen pulled out a ticket and called out a number, and it was not my number. Pretty soon, we had made it through almost all the cakes. There was just one cake left, and it was the pineapple upside-down cake. And even though I would have been very happy to win it, I have to say that the pineapple rings on the top of it seemed the tiniest bit desperate. There is something very sad about pineapple rings. I looked up at Grandfather Burke. He was studying me with a serious look on his face. And then I looked over at Betty Allen. She was holding the bowl with the numbers in it, and she was watching me too. I smiled at Betty Allen, and she smiled back at me. The light was shining off the fishbowl in a very beautiful way. Betty Allen put the bowl back on the table and reached her hand in and pulled out the last ticket. She did not take her eyes off me. I thought, I have won the last cake. The fishbowl was all lit up with the numbers and light. It really was a beautiful fishbowl. And then I remembered the little glass bowls that Betty Allen had used for the ice cream sundaes. And I remembered sitting at the glass-topped table with all of the Allens. I remembered Grandfather Burke sliding his bowl over to me and saying, "That's for you, Doodlebug. That is what I offered to you." And I knew what I wanted to do. I knew who I wanted to be. I wanted to be the person who sat at the table. I wanted to stay. Betty Allen cleared her throat. She called out the last winning number. And guess what? It was not my number. I did not win a cake. But I did not care. I was staying. Chapter 28. And so here I am, Granny, almost at the end of the story. Imagine how surprised I am to find that you are the one I am writing it for. And speaking of surprise, you will not be surprised to learn that Reverend Obertask is better at dealing with telephone operators than I am. I stood beside him in his office at the Good Shepherd Church while he talked to all the wrong Clarks and then to the right Clark, Ramey's mother. And then, finally, Reverend Obertask said, "Hello, Ramey Clark. There is someone here who needs to speak to you." And he handed the phone to me. And the very first thing that Ramey said to me was that Archie was there with her. She said she showed up at the back door and yowled until they let him in. And he has stayed there. He hasn't left the house at all. And Ramey believed that I would show up again, too. "When are you coming back?" said Ramey. I had to tell her that you were gone, Granny, and that you were not my granny to begin with, and that you had picked me up in an alley, and that my parents were not the Flying Elefantes, and that my real parents were unknown to me, and that I was not, after all, afraid of heights. I told her everything. And then I had to tell her that I was staying in Georgia. "What do you mean staying?" said Ramey. "I mean I am going to live here with the Allen family." "But what about us?" said Ramey. I started to cry then. The sun was shining into Reverend Obertask's office, and it was lighting up his walrus whiskers and the perpetually joyful dust motes. And a long way away in Florida, Ramey was crying too. I could hear her. Reverend Obertask cleared his throat. He said, "You know, people in Florida visit people in Georgia quite frequently." I took a deep breath. I said to Ramey, "You could come see me. All of you could come see me. I am only one state away." They came to visit a week later. Mrs. Clark drove Ramey and Beverly and Buddy and Archie over the Florida-Georgia state line, and she said that it was like being in charge of a traveling circus to have all of them in one car, but they came. And Burke Allen and Betty Allen and I have gone to visit Beverly and Ramey and Buddy in Florida. Archie, king of the cats, goes back and forth. Sometimes he stays with me, and sometimes he stays with Ramey, because he is a cat and he does what he wants to do. Clarence the Crow is starting to trust me. He comes when I whistle. He has not yet landed upon my shoulder, but he will, Granny, he will. I have respected your wishes. I have not come searching for you, but I have crossed the Florida-Georgia state line many, many times since we last spoke, and I look for you every time I cross over. I know that you will not be there, but I look anyway, and I dream about you. In my dream, you are standing in front of the vending machine from the Good Night Sleep Tight, and you are smiling at me, using all of your teeth. You say, "Select anything you want, darling. Provisions have been made. Provisions have been made." And I am so happy when you show up in my dreams and say those words to me. Thank you for picking me up in the alley of the Louisiana Five and Dime. Thank you for teaching me to sing. I don't know if you made it to Elf Ear or not, but I want you to know that there is no curse of sundering upon my head. I love you, Granny. I forgive you. The end. I really enjoyed that ending. It's one of those things that touch your heart. Now that we have finished the book, this is what I would like for you to talk about in the discussion post below. Were you glad when you read that Louisiana had been telling her story for Granny the whole time? Is what she said at the end, when she told Granny that she was glad everything had happened the way it did, and that she forgave her Granny, does it say something about the healing process when you tell your story? Is that something that was a result of her telling her story? Was that a result of the healing process? If she hadn't had told her story, do you think that she would still feel that way at the end of the story? If telling your story is healing, what about hearing someone else's? How could that be its own kind of healing? Tell me what you think. I hope you enjoyed it, guys. Be on the lookout because we're going to have a new book after spring break.